you go, beautiful. What were you going to say to me, love? Do you have any requests or any specific directions?
Now, what do we have here?
This is the timeline
From the beginning, from the founding of the
United States to where corporate personhood took hold about halfway through.
It's the ongoing saga of human rights and corporate rights. Hi everybody, my name is Abraham Entin. I'm really glad to be here today. The last time I taught a class on the grass was at UCLA in 1973 when I was a TA, and I used to love to teach classes in the sculpture garden. I was in the history department, and it was really fun to teach in the sculpture garden down there. It was much warmer than it is here today, but that's another story. And that was how I met my wife, who showed up in one of my classes, and we've been together 40 years almost since then. We have 3 kids, and some of them probably older than some of you, and one or two younger. Than some of you, not all of you. Just a little background on me so you know where I'm coming from. First of all, I am the North Bay coordinator for Move to Amend, the North Bay affiliate of Move to Amend, which is the coalition to end corporate personhood for constitutional amendment that states that corporations are not people and money is not speech. But we'll get back to that after a while. Born in New York, Brooklyn, in 1945, 2 hours before President Roosevelt died. And in fact, the story is that my aunt came running into my mother's hospital room and said, "He's dead, he's dead!" And my mother said, "What happened to the baby?" She said, "Not the baby, the president!" So anyway, so that's kind of my relationship to the Democratic Party over the years. So we moved to Chicago when I was 8, and that's really where I grew up. I began my career in politics when I look back on it at about the age 15, when I signed a petition in favor of ending nuclear disarmament put out by the Stupid Peace Union, which was a very dangerous thing to do in the 50s in Chicago because it could affect if you got into law school in 10 years down the road. From there, I joined CORE, which is the Congress on Racial Equality, which was a civil rights group, obviously. Then I went to school at the University of Chicago, and that was the time of course, when Vietnam was emerging. We saw President Johnson elected on a platform of, "I'm not going to send American boys over there to Asia to do what Asian boys should be doing for themselves." That is fighting for freedom. And 2 months after his election, he escalated the war in Vietnam and sent a lot of American boys over there to, quote, do what Asian boys were supposed to be doing for themselves. I was one that didn't end up going. I ended up becoming a draft resistant and sending my draft card back to the government. Does anybody know the name Ramsey Clark? Who's Ramsey Clark?
Either the advisor to the president or secretary of defense.
Close. Anybody else? Who is he now? Anybody knows what he is now?
An author.
He's an author. He's one of the foremost anti-war voices and human rights voices in the world. But at the time when I had my interaction with Ramsey Clark, he was Attorney General for LBJ. He was the one to whom the envelope was addressed when I sent my draft card back saying why I wasn't going to fight in the war and telling them they could prosecute me for if they wanted to. I just bring that up because if ever you think that that a person can't be redeemed or that human beings are our enemies, I always look back to Ramsey Clark and think of St. Paul, you know, who was on his way to prosecute the Christians and had his what we call a Damascus moment, and of course became one of the great apostles. And Ramsey Clark went from being LBJ's Attorney General and prosecuting draft resistors to being one of the foremost voices for peace and justice in the world. So when you look at human beings versus systems, I like to think back to that and remember that everyone is redeemable. but systems, on the other hand, may not. So, I ended up in California, in sunny Venice Beach, and with my wife we founded a little company called Diaper Wraps, which was an early natural products company, did natural diapering, and had our 3 children. And here we are. We moved up here a year and a half ago, and I looked around for a move to a men's group to join, and there wasn't one, so I started one here. And it's been really great and really gratifying to see the kind of response that this issue has brought out in people. When we started talking about this issue years ago, I've been talking about corporate personhood and what it means for a long, long time. The general reaction was a blank stare. Like, what are you talking about? We got work to do with this corporation over here who's polluting that river. And then after we're done stopping them, we got to stop that corporation over there who's messing over the workers. And then when we finish over there, we got to stop that one that's emitting all kind of crap into the air. And look at them and say, well, how are they able to do all those different things? And maybe we should think about cutting them off at the head instead of just keep cutting off the arms. Because they keep growing arms. Because in fact they are immortal. So it really took a lot of things, but one of the things that most took was the Citizens United decision to raise this issue to a level of consciousness where people really began to see, oh, it's all connected. And the connection is the rights that corporations have to act like human beings. Bad human beings, sociopathic human beings, but human beings nonetheless. So that's kind of the background to this in one sense, but I'd like to kind of give a little background before we get into any kind of specifics, all right? I mean, it's very clear right now that what we call global corporations really dominate the world. I mean, what happens on our planet is really determined by them. And I don't know how many of you have been following what's happening in Durban now, the climate talks. Okay, I've been watching Amy Goodman, who's there all week, and it's a bad joke. It's a farce that turns into tragedy. But you've got all these world leaders, people from every nation there, and they can't do jack about climate change. And there's like this huge elephant in the room, because the reality is that all those governments there are really fronts for corporations. And the corporations aren't there. They're letting the politicians take the heat for global warming. So we can all be, yes, thank you very much, pun intended, yes. They're letting the politicians take the heat for global warming. But it's not really the politicians. The politicians are the employees. And it's the corporations and the banks behind them that are really calling the shots. But on the stage, what you see is the American, you get a chance to see the chief American negotiator for climate change talking there. I'm sure he's a very smart man, but you can't string 3 sentences together on this because he really has nothing to say. But there he is. So you have all these governments, there. I mean, if you look at, and I know you've seen some of this on John Daly's, on Jon Stewart's show, and Colbert, the clowns that are running for the Republican presidential nomination, right? You've got you really have it. From Herman, Becky Stan Kane to Rick, what's that agency? Who put that agency? To Michelle Bachmann, to Rick Santorum. I mean, the best they're coming up with is new serial adulterer Gingrich, who stands for family values. So it's part of, to me, it's part of a general debasement of politics. Do any of you ever heard of a book called Space Merchants? Somebody has. Written in the 1950s, when really people used science fiction, because you had McCarthyism and so on, you really couldn't do a lot of political critiquing. But the Cyril Kornbluth and Frederick Cole, this book is not available at the library. I checked already this morning. It's probably out of print. If you get a hold of this book, I believe it is at least as predictive as 1984 or Brave New World. in terms of what is happening right now. Because you literally have the President of the United States as a clown, and you have senators directly from the different corporations. And this is written in 1954. It's a kind of a comic dystopian novel, but it's right on target. You get a whole lot, it's great. But the point is that that elections have really become basically food for the 24-hour news cycle that funnels a tremendous amount of revenue into corporate media. I mean, everybody gives money to elect a candidate, even a good candidate, and the money gets spent buying ads in corporate-owned media. So it's become a way to keep people, and of course by making it such a circus, by having those kinds of people running, it devalues politics for us, and it also, so that we don't even really, a lot of people don't even care who gets elected. And it also it's another way of transferring funds, because you put all that money into the advertising, the 30-second sound bites that show up on all the networks and all the cable networks. So it provides programming and revenue, but very little in terms of good governance. Okay, so you've got that going on. You know, when I like to call it the political industrial complex. Right? They industrialize the political process. The same way that we had the military industrial complex, which President Eisenhower, and if you remember him at all, was the great general who, you know, led us in World War II, and on his way out the door, thank you very much, his farewell speech, he warned us about the military industrial complex. And here it is, guys. I'm out to play golf. You guys take care of it. Thank you very much. And of course, he handed that on to John Kennedy, and of course, Kennedy actually did try to do some things that were more positive, and gee, funniest thing, he ended up getting assassinated. So here we are. Now today, of course, we have the military-industrial complex, which has been transformed into the security-industrial complex. And now we have the educational-industrial complex. We have, of course, the medical-pharmaceutical-industrial complex. That's a really good one. We have the prison-industrial complex. Thank you. We're privatizing the prisons, turning them over to private corporations for them to make money and then use the prisoners for labor. So there's virtually nothing that isn't some kind of industrial complex. Along with that, of course, we have the fact that Americans, our primary social role has been somehow transformed from citizens into consumers. Yes, suddenly we are consumers. That's what we are. And of course, now they're moving us out of that one as fast as they can as well. But it used to be our job to, you know, to be the consumers for the planet, right? To consume the blood, to wear the blood diamonds, and to eat the chocolate that's grown by the slaves in the third world, you know, and so on. And to use up all the resources that we extract from other places. And now, of course, they're in the process of reducing us to the same place that everybody else in the world is. They don't need us to be consumers anymore, and so they've kind of cut us off, which is pissing off a lot of people, and which is, from one perspective, a good thing that these people are getting pissed off. But the reality is that that's the way the rest of the world's been living for a long, long time. They just don't need us to be the consumers anymore. But, you know, there's kind of well, I was also thinking about the way that they've commoditized the arts. A lot of you, I think, are involved in. You know, I mean, you judge a work of art by how much it brings at auction, by what its box office return was, by how high up on the charts it is. It's all a commodity. It's all a commodity. And that's the result of what's happening. And we'll go into that a little bit more detail in a second. So, you know, it's just interesting that, and again, I'm really not putting this down. I think it's a wonderful thing. But there was way more outcry about the $5 B of A charge, which was great because it really helped to galvanize Move Your Money Day and that whole movement, which is a crucial thing. But right now, of course, you know, there's this defense authorization bill that's going through that has provisions in there that are really overtly fascist. I mean, there's no other word for them. They're overtly fascist. And there was more outcry about that $5 a month extra that they were going to take out of our pockets, and they've taken everything else out already, than there is about this damn bill that would allow them to jail all of us for being right here doing what we're doing. So, and I really don't see the kind of outcry that there was. Now, maybe there will be, and I'm hoping there will be, but that's kind of in terms of citizen versus consumer, that's to me, a pretty good example of that kind of phenomenon. So, I could go on and on, but I'm not going to. I'd rather, at this point, focus on what we can do about it. Okay? That's really what we need to. We all pretty much know all that stuff. Maybe not in as much detail and so on, but we all pretty much know that. That's why we're part of. That's why we're doing the things we're doing. That's why we're here. So the question is, what else can we do about it? So let me give you a perspective that I've been working with for a long time that informs the way I look at these kinds of things. Okay? So corporations are economic entities, right? I mean, basically, if they have a role to play, I mean, we can talk about whether or not they're a good economic entity or not, whether they're the best one, whether there's other ways to organize, but they're an economic entity. And as such, they have a role to play, if any role to play, in the economy, right? I mean, they're a great way to get a lot of things made at a low price and so on and so forth, to organize economic activities. They used to be, of course, chartered specifically for that. You had a corporation that was chartered to build the Erie Canal. When the Erie Canal was built, thank you very much. And you know, people made their money and got it back, and then that was the end of the corporation. Over the years, of course, that's changed. But they are economic entities. And they really don't have a role to play in either our culture, in our cultural life, or our political life. When you look at, you know, I don't know if any of you have been following. I wrote a letter to the editor that got published in the Press Democrat a couple of weeks ago about Coca-Cola in the parks. You know about that? Not the letter necessarily, but the issue. Yosemite National Park was poised to end the sale of bottled water in Yosemite, right? Zion had done that before. Zion National Park had done that before. They'd won environmental awards for doing that. They eliminated 60,000 empty plastic bottles from the park per year. Yosemite was following suit. They were on the verge of implementing this program. Suddenly, they got the head of the Park Service got a call from Coca-Cola. Right? Coca-Cola's given about $13 or $14 million to the National Parks Foundation because they're such good corporate citizens. And which is another thing, of course, the idea of a corporate citizen. So we'll talk about that. But little time goes on, and the director of the National Park System reverses the decision to end the sale of bottled water in the park. And Coca-Cola spokesman said we had no influence over that decision. I know, saying with a straight face is very, very hard. The guy must make a lot of money because he was able to do it with a straight face. I can't do it. I don't make as much. But he said, you know, we just wanted a place at the table. We just wanted some input into the discussion. Well, of course, what happens when you sit down at the table with an 800-pound gorilla? Anybody know?
Gorilla wins.
The gorilla wins. You go away hungry. You go away with nothing. The gorilla eats it all. That's Coca-Cola in the park. So the idea. Oh, okay. So in this letter, thank you, Amy. In this letter that did get published in the Press Democrat, they left out a little paragraph. I was talking about this, and then I said, well, you know, at the same time that they're allowing Coca-Cola to keep selling water in the park and litter the park, they're clearing out all the occupies all over the country because of health and sanitation issues. So apparently there's one rule for corporations that want to pollute and affect our health and sanitation, and another thing for people who want to gather to exercise their First Amendment rights. So yes, thank you, Amy. But they left that out. It was still a coherent letter, and it still made a point, but it was much stronger with in there, if you want my opinion. But the idea that corporations have a place at the table or a role in making policy, when we're talking about what's going to happen to the jewel in the crown of the American National Park System, that's pretty much, to me, sums up what's wrong with this way that we've organized things. You've got an economic entity. You have economic entities that I mean, you have people spending so much time and energy trying to convince corporations to be good corporate citizens. There's lots and lots of well-meaning and wonderful organizations that do accomplish things, and everybody's working in this direction as our ally. So I'm really not trying to put people down, but trying to get corporations to be different than they are. You know the story about the woman who takes in the snake, right? That great song, where she takes it. There's a snake freezing in the grass, and she takes him in and she warms him and she loves him, and the snake, of course, repays by biting her. And as she's dying, she's saying, "Oh, but I was a good woman, I loved you and everything." And he says, "Shut up, woman! You know I was a snake before you took me in." They don't change. Their corporate charter says they're there to make money for the stockholders. That's their number one interest. Their number one responsibility is making money for stockholders. If they put anything else ahead of that, they could be sued for not fulfilling their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. I mean, there are things now called B Corps, and we can talk about that, where there's a triple bottom line or something. Well, that's not the kind of corporations that we're talking about, and even they wouldn't have a right to be citizens. But you cannot make a corporation or ask a corporation to be a good corporate citizen. They are not citizens. When President Kennedy was talking about our relationship with the Russians back during the Cold War and talking about trying to come to a peaceful rapprochement with them, and he said, ultimately, we all breathe the same air, we all drink the same water, and we all want the best for our children. That was what he was talking about with the Russians. Well, of course, corporations don't breathe the air, they don't drink the water, and they don't have any children. However, having said that, not being able to copulate, they still can fuck us all over pretty much. So, did I say something wrong? Okay. We can get along with the Russians. We will never be able to get along with corporations in that kind of way. So I think we really need to keep that in mind. It doesn't mean they have to be abolished necessarily, but it's an illusion if you think we're going to get along with them or get them to be good guys and girls. That's the whole history of the regulatory system in the United States. So basically the role of the economic system is to provide us with the goods and services that we need to sustain life on the planet. Okay? It's not a religion. It's not something that can't be changed. That's the role of the economic system. The way that those goods and services are distributed is not the business of business. It's not the role of the economic system to decide how the goods and services are going to be distributed. That happens in a different way. Okay? That happens through politics, basically. And politics with a small p in the broadest sense. But people in discussion figuring out how to get the goods and services from one place to another and so on, and what should be made and all those kinds of things. It can be part of the economic system as well, but not the way it is now. Okay? It's a little murky. But basically, the idea is that we build, we create, out of the, in the economic system. Right now, I just read something that was, as an old guy, was a little scary to me. I read something about how people are working. Actually, it's not scary to me. It should be scary to you. People are starting to work till the older and older. Okay, shorter retirements. People are working older and older, and that, you ready, is a boost to the economy. That will be a boost to the economy. So now so we are not working to live. We are now living to work, right? They're gonna have us working till we got one foot in the grave at least, and then they'll give us a little push. We'll take away Medicare, privatize Social Security, have us working until we're just about dead, and then push us over into the grave. Thank you very much. I mean, that is the direction that this is going. You know, and they just say it. It's a boon to the economy. Who the hell cares? How about the human beings? I mean, I don't want to be too radical, but I thought this was about people. Okay, what do I know? Okay, so, let me take this. Where was it?
And what they did on that was they said you don't have to pay taxes. You can work extra now, but you'll never have to pay tax on your Social Security. Before you could work and earn some money and have to pay on your Social Security. But now you'll never have to pay taxes on your Social Security.
Well, good. That means I can go back to work at Walmart. What a relief. All right. So look, if we're gonna change this, if we're gonna change the status quo, we have to confront corporate power in 3 areas, not just in 1 or 2, in 3 areas. We have to confront them in the culture, in the way that they've taken over our culture. We have to confront them in the economy, the way they have complete control of all the economic decisions that are made, and the way they control our politics. Okay? 1 is not enough, 2 probably, 2 might be enough, but 3 is better. And not only is 3 better, but 3 gives us the opportunity to have allies everywhere. There are great artists out there creating a lot of wonderful, you know, posters and all kinds of things, and God knows we need them. People need to be reached through culture. That's how people are really affected. Okay, that's how they're really affected in their hearts, is through culture. Through music, you know. I mean, I don't know if any of you seen me up when we Occupy, when we're here, singing in the love choir and dancing in the street, because the tyrants tremble when the people dance in the streets. They can't stand it. Okay? Our joy gets them scared. Okay? So we really, the culture, and we can create a culture that's outside of corporate control. I mean, that we are creating culture that's outside of corporate control. You have all these great bands and everything that connect directly with their fans, you know. God bless the Grateful Dead and all their children, you know. Amen. Tour and meet with their people and won't perform in an arena where people have to buy tickets to Ticketron, you know, with $18 surcharges and all that crap. Connecting directly with people. Singing together, doing things together, not just buying the next thing, not giving our children over to them, to their television shows and all that, you know, all the culture that they create. Because the culture that they create is really just designed, of course, to addict us to the products that they make. That's their purpose for culture. That really is their purpose for culture. They don't, you know, they don't give a damn about culture. They just want to know how they can turn it into a buck and how they can use it to control us, and especially to control our children. There's a huge amount of advertising directly to children. There's a wonderful group out of Boston and Cambridge called the Campaign for a Commercial-Free Childhood. These people are fabulous. They took on Disney and Baby Einstein. I mean, they're tough people, you know. And they were, and Susan Lin, who I had the pleasure of hearing speak when she was the executive director, she wrote a book called Consuming Kids, and she talks about, she compares advertising to children from 50 years ago to now, and she says, well, it's sort of like comparing a musket to a smart bomb. Okay, I'll tell you a story about a personal story. When we had our baby products company, we used to have to go to trade shows sometimes, and you know, where you try and connect the stores and selling your products and everything. And there's also people there for whom we are the audience. Principally among them in children's stuff are the licensing companies. You know, everybody knows what licensing is, right? When you buy the rights to use a Disney character on your T-shirt or on your bedding and so on. About 80% of the children's bedding market is licensed characters. You know, so people sleep with little rodents. You know, put their kids on sheets with little rodents on them and everything. But anyway, sorry. So I'm walking through the lobby where these companies have their booths, and one of the guys calls me over, and I don't really remember, it was a long time ago what. It wasn't Disney, but it was Power Rangers, or it was Teletubbies, or whatever the hell the flavor of the month was with, you know, in this field. the guy calls me up and says, "Are you buying our license for this year?" And of course, we never put a license guarantee on any of our products, needless to say. But I just, I said, "No, we're not." He says, "Well, you got to, because we're going to own the minds of the 3 to 5-year-old segment next year." And that's what he said to me. We're going to own the minds of the 3 to 5-year-old segment this coming year. Now, whether or not they could or would, that's what he thought I wanted to hear. And that was their corporate mission, to own the minds of the 3. I'm thinking, God, if a human being said that, I'd be calling the cops because he's probably a pedophile. This is pedophilia on a mass scale. This is what they do. They use the most sophisticated research methodologies, that they can. And I grew up in the market research industry, so I know a little bit about this kind of stuff when I was in school and everything. I mean, it's gotten way, way more sophisticated, and they spend billions of dollars to figure out how to sell us things and how to sell our kids things psychologically. What are the buttons to push and all that? And they constantly go around us to get to our kids with their advertising, of course. If you go to the campaign for Commercial Free Childhood's website, they just gave out their awards for the companies this year that did that the most. Okay, so this is how they operate in their culture. That's what they use culture for. So we have to reject their culture. That's one, and we have to find ways. They're in our schools now. Besides the fact that they privatize a lot of lunchrooms so that they feed our kids crap and make money on it. They get naming rights to school things, and they had it for a long time putting ads on school buses, piping it on the radio, which again, the campaign for Commercial Free Childhood fought and won on. All these things that are ways to get into our culture and get to us and our children with constant barrage of advertising and their message. And it's not even the products themselves. It doesn't matter what the product is. The message is, of course, you need what we make in order to have a good life. That's the message, period. Doesn't matter if you're in good hands with this company, we do it all for you over here, we're the real thing over there. Without us, you don't got a life. That's what they use culture to tell us. So we have to, it's a process that is at work already. I'm very heartened by a lot of the things that have happened in the culture, and we just really need to understand and support that, and create our own culture, not consume. Not the consumers of culture, but the creators of culture. Okay? Okay. In economics, well, as much as I forget what I said before about the $5 fee, wasn't that great? It really helped to kick off, move your money. We have to not give them our money. Duh. Sorry. Oh, why didn't I think of that? Whether it's, and it's not just us, because I know not too many of us who can be here at noon on a Friday have a high-paying job where we have a big checking and savings account, okay? But many of us know people with more money, or are parts of churches or other faith-based groups that have money. We should all be making sure that the organizations that we're part of don't put their money into Wells Fargo or B of A. That's number one. I mean, that's a really big thing. It really is a big thing. If the amount, there was more money moved into credit unions in like a month or two than there was in all of last year. It really makes a difference. The other thing is really to stop buying what they're selling. I know that, it's go local, it's buy less but buy better. We don't need so much crap. We just, if you're going to have stuff, at least have good stuff. And there's very little good stuff that you find at Walmart. Besides the fact, look, when I was in college at the University of Chicago, this group came through, this theater group. Of course, I'm blanking right now for a second. They'll come back in a second. But it was a very famous theater group, and they actually, one of the things they were famous for is they did nudity on stage before hair. But they were political, and they'll come back to me in a second again. But they would begin by having troop members out of the audience, and they would suddenly stand up. It's a little bit like a flash mob. Okay, just you think things that you know, everything is the same here. Somebody would stand up and say, I can't travel without a passport. And then they would sit down. And then somebody else would stand up and say, I can't live without money. And then they would sit down. And I'll never forget, somebody stood up and said, one of these people said, bananas taste like blood. Living Theater. The Living Theater was the name of this group. Bananas taste like blood. And what the hell did that mean? What does it mean? What? It means where it comes from. It means what are the conditions under those bananas are grown? What gets me a banana for a nickel? You know, in 1962. How come bananas cost me a nickel? Because of the blood of the people who grew those bananas in the South American banana republics that were controlled by United Fruit Chiquita, and you know, and so on. So we don't need to buy everything they sell us. And when we do, you know, the wonderful thing about corporatism, I think we've all seen the comparison to cancer. You know, that this economic system has a lot like a cancer. One of the big reasons for that, of course, is because it depends on continual growth, right? What everyone's looking for is how much did we grow last quarter, right? Which, of course, naturally means that to grow, you have to consume more and more because you got to eat something, and that's destroying the planet. But aside from that, that's what they do, and that's what makes them so dangerous. But it also is what makes them so vulnerable, because in fact, we don't need everybody to stop buying what they sell. We don't even need half the people to do that. Probably, I don't know what the tipping point is, but it might be 10%. It might be if 10% of the people pull their money out of the big banks and stop buying, really stop buying what they're selling, well then their stocks will start going down because they won't have the quarterly growth that they depend on, you know, and so on. Okay? We don't have to get everybody. The more people we get, the better it'll be, obviously. But if we would really stop buying, if everyone agreed with us, stop buying what they sold, the revolution would be over tomorrow. Okay? So that's the second prong. We got the culture. We have to become creators of culture instead of consumers of culture. Then we have to become, we have to help to build this new economy. And by the way, it's out there already. I mean, there is free trade instead of there's fair trade instead of free trade. You know? That exists already. We don't have to, people have been working on this for a long time, on trying to find forms and ways to do economics so that's really for people and doesn't exist on the backs of the third world. Okay, where you really pay a fair price for coffee. And if you can do it local, you do it local. If you can't, you make sure that it's done with the least impact on the planet and with fairness to the people over there because they have to make a living. Okay, this is a global problem with a global solution. It's not just what happens to us, it's what happens to everybody. We're going to win. We really have to think about what's happening to everybody around. It's not just us. But okay, so there we got the culture and the economy. So what's left? The politics. And that's where I come in. That's where my particular bent and my particular so the point is we have people working in the culture. We've got lots of great artists, and maybe some of them are here, and people who work in culture, and you keep doing what you're doing. We got people working in the economy. I mean, my wife went to a conference, she came out of it like amazed at the number of really progressive investment vehicles that exist in order to finance people who are trying to do socially responsible work in the economic field. We were talking about B Corps the other day, you know, where you have corporations that actually have it in their charter voluntarily to what's called the triple bottom line: profit, planet, and people. Committed to that, and people who invest in a B Corp understand that their profit is not the first thing. Okay, it's there because if you don't make a profit, you don't have anything to reinvest and so on. You know, but it's equal. It's equal by a commitment to the planet, to how the products are made, and it's equal to the people who make the products and who work in the company. Okay, so it's the triple bottom line. So there's lots and lots of wonderful examples in the economy, and lots of people who are working in those. Okay. And if we're not doing it, we should support it. That's all. Boy, support the people who are doing the cultural work if we're not doing that. Support the people in the economic work if we're not doing that. I choose my karma brings me to do political work. Okay? And I believe that one of the fundamental ways that corporations have been able to take over the political system, certainly in the United States. In other countries, they just buy it outright. Okay? It's called corruption. Okay? You go in, you pay the head honchos, and you take it over. Okay, that's their problem. They need to deal with that where that happens. But here in the United States, they have used this idea, this principle of corporate personhood is fundamental to the way that they've been able to take over our political system. Okay, and this is something, and we can unroll that banner again if we want, but it's something that's really been going on since the beginning of the country. Okay, don't forget, if you knew and you forgot, don't forget that the Constitution of the United States had nothing about human rights in it. Nothing. It was all about property and trade and you know, those kind of issues. Okay, and the people who fought in the Revolution looked at it and said, well, that's all very nice, but what about us? And so they had to come up with the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. Okay, that was the only way they could get the Constitution passed, was by adding the Bill of Rights to it. And those rights were for human beings. The word corporation is not and never has been in the Constitution. Okay, there it is. These words are not found in the Constitution. Slavery, democracy, corporation. Okay, those words are not found in the Constitution. So this is a long, long timeline, and we're not today going to go into this. Okay, this is a whole other kind of thing. But this is an idea of the way this has unfolded. Okay.
Can you find that online?
Yes, absolutely. You go to movetoamend.org and /resources, and you could print out an 8-page in landscape version that I have in my little folder there. Okay, so you don't have to do this, but this is great. But you don't have to end up with this. You could just print it out on your own computer and have all that and look at it. But right from the beginning, there was this tension between human rights and the rights of money. Okay, and there were a whole series of cases. Citizens United is the last in a long series of cases. It's not something that just kind of sprung out of the ground. Oh my God! A lot of people trace this back to, well, it could trace back to Dartmouth College decision where corporations became parties to a contract instead of being, and that changed the way they were regulated. Most people go back to the Santa Clara versus the Railroad, Santa Clara County versus the Railroad decision in 1876, where a clerk of the court put in the head notes that this decision said that corporations have the rights of people. And it started to become precedent and so on. It really doesn't, I mean, it matters from a certain perspective, but the bottom line is that there's always been this tension. Look, on the one side, you've got corporations. There's one figure on that timeline that I do want to use, and that is, because this one really blew my mind, so to speak, if anybody still uses that term. It's something I really want to find this. It's about the number of cases that were brought under the 14th and 15th Amendments between the years 1890 and 1910. And I want to just get the number right, rather than just kind of make it up. It's like down on the side here someplace. It'll say it's in big letters. You don't have to read anything. It's big letters about the number of cases. It's one of those pages. Sorry, it's only 8 pages, so it shouldn't be that long. The point is that there's been this tension, okay? At the beginning of our country, the only people who could vote were white males over the age of 21, usually property owners and usually Christian. That is, you had to belong to a church, specific church, in order to have the right to vote. Okay, so over time, that right has been expanded. You know, first black males got it. Well, no, first non-Christians, whatever it was. didn't have to own property. It just kind of kept, it's been a constant expanding of this right to vote. It's, of course, now the Republicans are trying to contract that with a lot of, I mean, and of course there were always the Jim Crow laws and all those things. It wasn't like one long, wonderful timeline of the expansion of voting rights and human rights. But the trend was, on the one side, this expansion of the right to vote, the right to be a citizen and to be part of the political system. And thank you, Amy, here it is. Yeah. Of the 14th Amendment cases brought before the Supreme Court between 1890 and 1910, okay, 19 dealt with African Americans, 288 dealt with corporations. These were the amendments that were passed after the Civil War in order to ensure the rights of the newly freed slaves. And immediately, corporations began to use those amendments to expand their own rights. So, so there were 288 cases dealt with corporations and 19 dealt with African Americans. And those were the years, of course, when African Americans were in the South were being pushed back further and further into becoming sharecroppers, and in many ways being certainly economically worse off than they were under slavery. Not to say that slavery was in any way a good thing, but just from an economic perspective, there was more security in being a slave than being a sharecropper. So at the same time that that's happening to the African Americans on whose behalf these amendments have been passed, corporations are using them to expand their rights, become more and more, take over the rights of human beings. And unfortunately, I mean, there's, unlike love, where, you know, the more you love, the more love there is to give, right? And the more love there is to receive. These rights are much, yes, thank you. these rights are much more of a zero-sum game. Because the reality is that the more rights corporations get, the less rights human beings have. Corporations, in general, use their human rights to squash the human rights of human beings. Give you another example out of my own experience, and in the political realm. Back in 1990, which was the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, us in the natural diapering business, it had it was the best year we ever had. We were doing great. We had our little company, and we worked with the diaper service industry. Those guys were very interesting because they were all pretty much small business Republicans who put up with us environmentalists because we were making them money. And they allowed me, as a member of the industry, to start the Committee on Health and the Environment of the National Association of Diaper Services. I was the chair and the only member. But it gave me a card that I could give out. It allowed me to do things. And in that capacity, I went to a lot of environmental conferences and so on, and I met people. And I made an alliance with an organization that was in the forefront of getting the first bottle bills passed. You know, the reason why we get a nickel why you have to pay a nickel for the bottles and everything. Nobody wanted that bill passed. The supermarkets didn't want it passed. The beverage makers didn't want it passed. The bottle manufacturers didn't want it passed. No industry wanted it passed. They got it passed. They were tough cookies right here in California. All over the country, there were, Vermont, God bless them, the governor wanted to put a ban on it. So this organization, having done the bottle bill so successfully, decided they were going to take on disposable diapers next. And they were going to work with us, you know, and they were going to have this campaign to get a tax put on disposable diapers in California. And they were going to have a press conference on a certain day to announce this campaign in Sacramento and, you know, the kickoff of it. The night before the campaign, I get a call from the executive director of the organization, and she's pretty much in tears. She says that everybody on her board got a call the night before from a lawyer from the largest maker of disposable diapers, telling them that if they went ahead, if this organization went ahead with this campaign, they'd have every one of them in court for the rest of their lives. Okay? That was that, and of course, they caved, and I don't blame them for caving. I'm not, you know, but she did not really expect that, and to me it was just, oh yeah, that is what they do. There wasn't one law anywhere in the country that got passed. There wasn't one tax that got put on disposable diapers anywhere in the country. And it was the height of the environmental movement in this country, 20th anniversary of Earth Day. Didn't get one of them passed. So much for free speech. When it's human beings, especially if the politics and your agenda is not theirs, they will do everything they can to squash your right to free speech. Okay, so it's not an expanding thing. It's a zero-sum game. Your rights threatened. Nowadays, this is the best, and then I'll probably stop. Okay. We all know with Monsanto and the GMO campaign, right? The GMO labeling campaign. We got a huge campaign going now to allow us to know what's in the food that we eat. The legal basis for not doing that is discrimination. You see, we would discriminate against these products made by Monsanto, or with Monsanto ingredients in them, if we knew that they were there. And since there isn't any difference between a GMO food and when I say real food, it would be discriminatory. And so that's the basis upon which they have argued their cases, that they need, the biggest biotech company in the world needs protection. They need protection from us, the people, because if we knew what was in the food that we ate, we would discriminate against them. So if you ain't living in Alice in Wonderland's world right now, I don't know where you're living. But that's to me, these are just little examples of why we need to pass this amendment that says that corporations are not people. They don't have any of these rights. And money is not speech. So even if they don't do it through a corporation, okay, even if it's just the Koch brothers giving their money straight up, they can't. Okay? They can't. We could say that they can, because money is not speech. And just because they got a lot of money doesn't mean that they can drown out our voices with their voices. Okay? And there's a lot of amendments floating around now. And I just have to say, and the third part of our amendment, if you saw it, is that none of this could be construed in any way as attacking freedom of the press. Okay? Because they'll try and use that as well. So, very simple. Corporations are not people. They can be regulated. They're an economic entity. They can be regulated. They have no rights. They don't have a place at the table when we're talking to each other as citizens. Okay? And money is not speech. No matter how much money you got, you're still one person. When we get, that's called democracy. Okay? That's the principle of equality at work in the political sphere. It's democracy. We're all equal when we come together as citizens. We may not be equal in culture, because I know I'm never going to play the saxophone like Miles Davis, no matter how I try. Okay? We're not going to be equal in culture. Okay? That's where the ideas come from. That's where, you see who's got a good idea, you follow it. That's what happens, right? You guys all get together, and whoever's idea is good, talk among yourselves, you follow the good ideas, that's what comes out of the culture. That's where all the imagination lives and so on. Okay? But that's where freedom lives. That's where human rights live. It's in the culture. In the politics, it's all about equality. It's all about, we're all in this together. We're citizens. We meet together as equals, and we talk things over, and then we decide. We vote, or we work by consensus, however we work, but we work together. And in economics, okay, what's left? That's where humanity lives. Okay, that's where I can't stand to eat that good dinner while you're sitting next to me starving. Okay, that's where we take care of each other. That's where there's plenty enough for all of our need and not enough for greed. Okay, that's really where that has to live. So that we really develop an economic system that is based on making sure that the people who grow the food have enough to eat, and have the clothes and have what they need so they can live too. And now, isn't it great that we could go to Walmart and get the bananas for 3 cents a pound or whatever the hell it is, Because it tastes like blood. If you do it, it should taste like blood. Should is a word I don't like to use. But I think for more and more of us, it does taste like blood. I think more and more people are getting to a place where they don't want to. They don't want to eat off of other people's back. They don't want to wear the blood diamonds. They don't want to eat the chocolate that's grown by kids in the third world, under slavery conditions. They don't want to wear the clothes that are made in, by prisoners and so on. Okay? So we have work to do in all 3 areas, and we need to support each other as we do our work in different places, and do the work in the place that calls us the most. So that's why I do what I do with Move to Amend. And I want to invite all of you to San Francisco on January 20th, which is not just a big day for us. It's the second anniversary of Citizens United, and we're going to be occupying the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals at noon. But Occupy San Francisco has called this Occupy Wall Street West Day. And there's going to be stuff happening all day in San Francisco in the financial district. It's going to be starting early in the morning. I'm on the working group for San Francisco that's making all this, putting all this together. It's really going to be fun. But you can go as early as you want, be out in front of the B of A or wherever you want, and then march over to the courts. We'll start at noon. Give plenty of time to work in the morning, wherever you want. Get together at noon. We may be able to hand our amendment to the Supreme Court, to the head of the court, but if not, we will nail it to the courthouse door, or use duct tape, which is modern day nails, and have a good time doing it. So thank you all very much. If there's any questions, I know some of you have to leave and so on, but I'm happy to stay and answer questions and hear what you have to say.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. Will Rogers back in the 20s said, "We have the best Congress money can buy." So this is not a new, Citizens United didn't start this thing. This has been going on for a long time. I got a political cartoon from the 1890s that shows the Senate, and then behind them are all the trusts. Big, fat, loaded things, the sugar trust, the steel trust, the oil trust, Corporations hate competition, by the way. They hate it. They like orderly markets and monopolies. So all this free enterprise, competitive things, John D. Rockefeller was the most anti-competitive person imaginable. Okay? He'd go in, you had your gas station over there, he'd open Standard Oil across the street, you charged 23 cents a gallon, he charged 21. If you took it to 19, he charged down to 17. Didn't matter because he had all the money in the world behind him, and he'd put you out of business. Okay? He just put you out of business the same way Walmart wipes out Main Street. Okay? Just lower the prices, pull them in, and then when you don't have any more competition, you jack them up again. They hate competition. It's also so much, the thing is that there are all these other amendments around now, but almost all of them deal with just the second clause, the getting the money out of politics clause. Okay? That's important. That's why it's in the amendment. But compared to the other damage they do through their corporate personhood, like advertising directly to your kids around you, around your influence and so on, to me, it's far worse, far more pernicious. The way they try to turn us from citizens into consumers, the way they make money off of our illnesses, the way they go in, they privatize the lunchrooms, and they feed the kids processed crap, and then the kids get obese, and they end up with diabetes, and they make money off of that because they provide the drugs. It all adds to the GNP. All of it, all the sickness and all the illness and everything else. It all adds to the GNP. Okay? We got to find a different way of organizing ourselves and measuring our economic success than, oh my God, we spent so much money on medicine this year. Isn't that great?
What do you say to middle-class people who are afraid?
Everyone's afraid. I get to look around and say, well, are you really happy with what's happening now? Because the reality is that fair trade does exist.
Yeah.
And all these other things do exist. People have been spending a lot of time and energy building a new world while the old one crumbles. And we just really need to find each other, which is what is such a wonderful thing about Occupy, of course, is that it allows us to find each other. We're all working on the computer over there and here, and we've all got together into these public spaces where we can see each other and form these kind of affinity groups and meet the people that we're going to be working with in this struggle for many years to come. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to win in the next 2 years, but we're going to be working in the right direction together for a long time.
Since this is an amendment, it requires 2/3 of the states to ratify it. Isn't there the possibility